And welcome to Light Years. Andy Lou, Steph Curry is injured once again, and there's only one person we can bring on to help us break this down. Take you and I off suicide watch and just kind of figure out what is going on. And that is our friend, Dr. Nirav Pandya. Dr. Nirav, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Good. Obviously, not good to hop on when there's another Curry injury, but don't think it's too serious.
You,
We'll be all right.
you are the boogeyman, by the way. Every time,
No.
I love you. You know I love you. But every time Sam's like, "We got to get Doc on," I'm like, "All right, I'm in." But
We gotta cancel it out. Like maybe we'll get him on in the summer when we get reports of some guys like gain 15 pounds of muscle. Like break down what that means. Go the opposite way. But yeah. Okay, so Steph Curry has done it again. He has broken records and gotten injured in a way that I had never heard of before. So pulling it up right now, he has suffered a partial tear to the superior tibiofibular ligaments.
Nice.
And interosis membrane, as well as a contusion to his lower leg.
Wow.
Gonna be honest with you, Doc, I've spent way too much time on WebMD and I have no clue what any of this means. Can you kind of like walk us through this can you translate this for the layman?
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of the issues with getting MRIs now is that 20 years ago this would have been like you hurt your leg and someone ran into it. So I think now with an MRI you're seeing what exactly gets injured when someone bangs into your leg. So kind of starting from the bottom, contusion means basically just kind of a bruise. It's where you got injured, and I think that's really kind of what set this all off. Then you go to this tib fib ligament. When we think about high ankle injuries, where there are these ligaments between the ankle, this is essentially like right at the top of the two shin bones. So I got my little model here. Okay.
Nice.
So right on the outside over here, where the tibia and kind of the fibula and the tibia connect right over here, there are these little small ligaments right over here, right underneath the knee. And that's when they talk about the tib fib ligaments basically getting injured. You get hit in this bone right over here, those ligaments get stretched out. And the interosseous membrane is these kind of like, there's a thick band of tissue right between the two bones right over here. So basically he got banged over here, the ligaments got stretched out, and he bruised some of his stuff down here. So essentially it's just describing an area that got injured. The only time these ever need surgery is if that joint dislocates out.
Yeah.
And that only happens in like car accidents. So fancy way of saying he got hit on the outside part of his leg right below the knee. And hopefully, it's going to be a couple weeks and we'll be back.
So that's the thing. They haven't put a timetable on him. And I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong here, it's mostly because there's swelling in the region and they can't necessarily tell. Is that probably the most accurate way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of it's that. Part of it's also this injury is really rare. You don't see it very often. You really have to get hit right here. So, like foot injury, ACL, meniscus, we know X months exactly, you're back. It's not there. So really it's about, how bad the MRI was and really how his body responds. So Curry could have a great response and we're talking 2 weeks. If he's having pain, he's not moving well, it could be 4 to 6 weeks. But in general, when you think about ligaments and kind of this membrane getting injured, it lands around 4 weeks. But how his body responds and how careful they want to be is really going to determine that exact time frame.
Only Steph Curry could find a way to get an injury that really nobody. So you're saying like there's no comparison with other NBA players, and I'm sure at this point you've looked at it's been a few days. There's no comparison to anybody in the past that have had this. That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, I think, usually, and I think probably a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of players probably get hit in this area.
Right.
And they just call it a bone bruise. And they're like, you got a bone bruise, you'll be back in a couple weeks. I think it's Curry. You got to be careful. You're going to get an MRI. And then you're seeing stuff that lights up on an MRI that just describes where he got bruised. And it's not necessarily some kind of like bizarre injury. It's just really descriptive. Yeah.
So, based off of the model you showed us and we've seen a few people pointed out that way. Is he at risk to injure his knee if he comes back too soon? Because the first thing I see with that is like, it's good it's not the knee, but it is right below the knee.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, anytime you've got irritation in that area and your meniscus is kind of close by, your lateral collateral ligament's close by. So absolutely, anytime that area is compromised, it's going to put stress in other areas. So that's really where I think the caution will come in. Not because this injury is going to flare up, but are you going to stress something else could then be a several-month injury.
All right, I got to ask. He hurt his leg against Denver the 2 nights before on the playing against the back-to-back. I don't know if you caught that one. He hurt it, but he was questionable coming into the game against Dallas. Yeah, right. So does that could it be I guess it's a hard question to answer, but could it be that, I think you know where I'm going. Could it be that where it makes the ligaments weaker, then he gets hit by the guy, then all of a sudden now he's out for a month, right? Is that something that could have happened?
I think if it was like a groin or a hamstring, you could say, look, if it's like a soft tissue thing where things are wearing down, you can definitely see that increased injury risk with a back-to-back. I think this was just bad luck. He got hit, like, I don't think if it was a back-to-back, not a back-to-back, like, I think it's simply just he got hit there, then he happened to get hit again, and it just kind of set him up for that injury. So I think it's just bad luck.
Yeah.
If it was a hammy, something else, and I'd say, look, maybe things are wearing down. I think this is just the way the Warriors season's gone.
That's right. It really is like a nice like microcosm of what has been just a frustrating season. The bone bruise part we haven't necessarily talked about much. Is that mostly just a pain tolerance?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this area. Yeah, if it was like a little bit higher up in like a more critical area, then you get worried about it. But that's probably the least important part of the whole thing. It's just like, look, it's not an area that you stress a lot because it's not weight bearing. So if you can tolerate the pain, it's pretty much not a big deal.
I wonder. How is it compared to like an MCL? Remember the last time? Remember when Steph got hurt in 2016? He had the grade 2 and he came back in like 2.5 weeks, which, looking back, we know it's not, it should be 5 weeks, 4 to 6 or something like that, right?
But it's the playoffs.
It's the playoffs. He came back in 2.5.
Right.
So like you gave a wide range. You said like if he feels real good, he's back in 2, maybe. Maybe worst case scenario, it's like 6 weeks. So we're talking about a range of 2 to 6. When should we expect to like find out? Would we find out in a week, before the All-Star break that, all right, this is looking like 4, or are we just going to be touch and go here for the next month?
Yeah, no, I think we'll find out pretty quickly. I mean, I think the first 7 to 10 days, you get a sense of like how he's moving, how things are going. So usually if pain's pretty good, they're going to start progressing him in terms of activity. So I think we'll find out pretty quickly. I think the key difference between this and like an MCL is that the risk of re-injury with an MCL is pretty high. This is such a bizarre area to hurt. So the only way you could potentially get re-hurt is if you got banged right in that area again, which would be pretty hard to do. Or which we kind of had, or if he's not fully pain-free and then he kind of hurts something else. So I think that if they err on the side of
because it hurts him too much.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think we'll be safe because they're safe with their injuries, so I think they'll probably won't have that happen. It's just kind of one of those bad luck things.
No, I definitely feel confident they're not going to like risk it because he's too important to the franchise to like throw out there a little too soon. My question is, okay, so trade deadline is Thursday. This complicates things in the sense of if it is that 2 to 3 week and he can play through it, then it's really nothing and it shouldn't change their plans. If it's the 6 to 8 week, then maybe they should be a little more protective of other things. And so what is the realistic chance that they can feel confident that they know by like, let's say Wednesday, is Steph going to be back end of February, or like, oh man, this is going to be one of those things that's more like middle to end of March?
I think the MRI, because they'll know how bad everything is inflamed and injured on there. So we're just getting a description of what's injured. So they probably have a good sense of, in general, how this will turn around. So, the first 48 to 72 hours, you get a good sense. Is he responding pretty well? Is he getting stiff? So I think they'll probably know internally, and Celebrini probably will be like, look, he's going to be good. This is really 2 to 3 weeks. We may not report it, but that's where it's going to be. As opposed to 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say that it does provide like just a leverage advantage to like publicly like make it sound worse than it is, or just not disclose it to let people imagine. Right, so you're saying there's a decent chance like they have a feeling internally, at least what it'll be. Just like they're not going to tell us, but they feel internally.
Sam's going to find out.
Yeah, probably. Exactly,
Sam's
well, that's good. That was my fear when they're like, we're not going to disclose the timeline. I'm like, oh, it must be too swollen for them to make some sort of like definitive statement. You're saying that's probably not the case?
Yeah, probably not the case. And they're probably also just waiting to see, like, they probably have a general sense, but they're like, what they don't want to get into is like, he gets in 2 weeks in and then he's like, oh, my knee's sore. And then suddenly it's another week. But they have probably a general timeline of earlier side versus late side. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of from a Warriors perspective, because you've been around a lot. The Warriors, and compared to other teams, are they the team that just takes the longest to bring a player back? Like, is it from the outside in, obviously, but like, are the Warriors? You go ahead.
I think so. I mean, the only other person I can think of that's had a long recovery is Lonzo Ball for the Bulls. I mean, he's been out for a long time.
Right.
But I think that the Warriors in general, they don't. A lot of teams will kind of skirt that line of like, okay, 3 weeks, we're going to get you back earlier. Like they definitely they'll do more in terms of the ramp up period on the back end. A lot of teams will be like, you go play 35 minutes, but not the back to backs, making sure there's slowly increasing the minutes, which drives the fan base crazy. I know, but they do avoid that secondary injury. Like I think that's key for a lot of the players. People will get weird, bizarre injuries like Curry, but Wiseman aside, they pretty much have gotten people back pretty predictably. And we overlook Clay a little bit, but that's a large injury thing that they needed to manage, and they got him back. So I think they're pretty good in terms of getting people back, safely.
Makes sense. All right. One last thing. Curious about this, and feel free to not comment if you don't want to. But Dr. Seth Sherman shares that Steph's injury is a variant of a high ankle sprain.
Scares me. Immediately.
A high ankle is a very common basketball injury. So like Andy and I know what that means in terms of recovery time, but I can't even grasp the concept of it being like a high ankle, considering it's the top of the tibia. Can you like walk us through what he's getting at?
Yeah, no, I think essentially what he's getting at is, high ankle sprain involves kind of the injury between those two bones, between your tibia and fibula. So he's basically saying, look, when it's like a quote unquote a high ankle, it's lower down where those ligaments get injured.
Sure.
He's just saying it's the same sort of concept, but happening up higher. So I agree. It's kind of like the concept's the same, connection between those two bones. But I think it's a quicker turnaround in general.
Doctors got to dumb
that
everything
I like.
down
That
for
I
us,
like to
man.
hear.
They got to dumb everything. I don't understand anything. So that's good. That's good.
I legitimately thought the diagnosis the Warriors threw out there was just like trolling the fan base. Like how medical can we make this so that people have no clue what it means? But anyway, Dr. Nirav, we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you. This is super informative. You have a great evening.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. You too, guys. Take care. Yep.